There we go. All right. So go ahead and do that. And close you. All right. So again, mute your microphones. There's the chat room. Um, so far, let's see what we got here. Oh, wow. Okay. So,
I didn't realize this, but there's also a little raise hand function.
uh-huh, there is. Yes, there is. Yeah, you can raise your hand. Because right now I'm looking at a list of all the attendees here on my right hand side. If somebody raised, like Dana just raised got a raised hand there. So, and then I think you just click it to put it back down again. I don't think I can lower your hand. Yeah. Okay, there you go. So, um, you can go ahead and raise your hand. Now, I'm going to be talking at the same time, so I may not be paying attention. So, if you want to ask a question, go ahead and unmute your mic, and then just say, "Hey, Dr. Lopez," and please don't be bashful about interrupting me like that to
I
ask
actually have
questions.
a quick question.
Sure.
Can you address our Sona Sona
Oh yeah,
or
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
research?
yeah. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, so you can completely forget about all the research requirements. You can totally forget about all of them because they basically said that since we can't have more than two people within 6 feet of each other, you can't do research. So they completely shut down all the research activities, all the presentations at Tamusa. So
Well, I know that I had at least 3 online credits from research.
uh-huh.
So just it does nothing
Yeah,
at all. Doesn't go.
yeah. Let me take a look at what.
Credit.
Let me take a look at what everybody's done. If like maybe 30 or 40% of the class has actually completed some credits, I'll go ahead and use that as extra credit. What I'll do is I'll just add it to your final grade, literally to your final average. So if your final average is 85, I'll add those points to make it 89 or whatever. So I'll do that. Otherwise, that's it. The Sona thing is over, so you could just forget all about it. We were told that sometime last week, so that they were going to shut everything down. So, part of the go with the flow thing, I suppose. Does anybody have any other questions or comments of Bernie? Anybody want to? I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope nobody's, murder.
How,
Question?
how do you raise your hand on the?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's there is a if you hover over your name on the list of attendees, there should be like a little icon there with a little hand. I can't see it because I'm the host.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. And that was Faith, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you are. Are you in San Antonio, Faith?
No, I'm in Houston.
Oh, okay. How's things in Houston? Is it pretty? Is it locked down over there too?
Yeah, definitely. They want
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's crazy everywhere. I think this is very odd. But like I said, we'll get through it. If again, if you guys need if you guys need to connect with me for any reason, just let me know. I can be available here or through email, so just let me know. Um, Other than that, I think the tests are going to be exactly the same as they were before, online, so you guys are used to that already, so that's good. And your grade's going to be computed the same way minus the Sona stuff. So no big.
Professor,
Yeah, who's this?
it's Isaac. Sorry to interrupt. I just
No.
wanted to let everybody know that there is I'll post the link. This link is basically a government link to track the coronavirus. So
Nice. Yeah.
if you guys want to, it's with the Department of Defense, and It has a ton of information. So if you want to click on that and take a look and just be safe, just be aware of what's going on around you and how many
Yeah.
people are infected, you know?
Yep.
It's really useful.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thanks for that, Isaac. That's great.
No
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the main way to combat this is just through information. Being as open as possible with as much information as possible. That's
I have
that's
another question.
Adriana. Yeah, go for it.
So when it comes to class time, is it gonna be around the same, like
Yeah,
the exact same time as we would normally do?
same time. Yeah. Based on the poll results that I see, it looks like you guys would prefer a combination of both. Now, I have to record this crap anyway. I mean, a 2 hour lecture takes 2 hours to record, right?
Yeah.
So I am going to be online every Monday night at 7 o'clock to do the lecture. And I would really appreciate as many people as possible showing up, but I get it if you don't, right? I totally get it. But I will post these lectures, these recordings through Blackboard. So I'll put a link in Blackboard, and the lectures are probably actually going to be posted on YouTube, on my YouTube channel.
Gotcha.
But I'll go ahead and put a link for you on Blackboard for the lectures. I'll just put it in a little playlist. I think we've got, I don't know, like 5 more lectures to go or something like that. I forget how many we have left, but I'll just post a playlist there of the lectures, and you can watch them there. And it'll probably be a day or two after the lecture. So because it takes a long time to download these huge files and then upload them. I'm not going to really edit them because this is just a lecture, so I'm really not going to edit the videos. I'm just going to post them raw. So,
All right.
but
Awesome.
but again, even though I am posting lectures, I would appreciate you guys if you'd show up. Again, you don't have to. I know, I get it. I totally get it if you don't want to, but it's kind of night. It's kind of late at night. You've been stuck in the house all day, so I get that. But
Yeah, like my little brother and my dad's birthday party was supposed to be yesterday, but we had to cancel it until the summer.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, I don't know if Isaac could speak to this as well, but this is supposed to go on for a couple months at least. So, it's going to be a while. It'll probably won't be till June.
I work in the server industry, and today we all got
that's
a
right.
call.
That's right.
We all got a call how we're all terminated for the time being.
Jesus.
And we have to go and sign a discharge paper, and we can file for unemployment.
Ooh, that's good. Wow.
Yep.
That's rough. That's
Crazy.
rough.
Yeah.
Well,
we're gonna be here a while with this thing. We might as well get used to it.
Oh yeah,
Right.
it's gonna be a long while. I mean, just hunker down and just I just wish people would quit panic buying. That's one of the things that's really pissing me off is these people that are toilet paper and everything. It's like everything's gone, and it just pisses me off because there's no need for it. I'm really hoping that in the next week or two people start calming down and we can at least go to the grocery store and get what we need instead of having to get up at. My wife and I got up at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning to go stand in line at HEB. I felt like I was in the Soviet Union,
lines.
Yeah, like in line for bacon and bread in Russia in 1972.
Yeah, it's what it felt like.
Actually,
It's been
learned that like if you go outside of San Antonio to like the smaller cities around here, the HEB is like not packed at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we went to
Okay.
Floresville, to the HEB in Floresville because like my mom's brother is in prison out there. So like we pass by the HEB all the time, but we never go until we finally decided to go and see if it was like as crazy as the one here in San Antonio. Because we're by the Culebro HEB, and that one's like crazy.
Oh yeah, that's the one we're at. That's where we live. That's like 2 minutes
it's
from our
crazy.
house. Yeah.
So we went to the one out in Floresville, and there was nobody. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah, it was pretty calm.
Well, I would go to Uvalde to because my dad lives in Uvalde, but I don't want to get anywhere near my dad because he's 82 years old. I just don't want to take a chance of making him sick. So,
Yeah.
so far, but yeah, that's a good tip. Maybe we should take a drive out to Floresville or something to go.
Floresville.
It's nice. I mean,
Oh yeah,
It's
it is. It
nice.
is. There's nice folks.
My husband just went. I don't think he found any toilet paper. That's the one thing that is just off.
I know. Yeah, we keep going to Costco, and it's like they're even limiting people, and they're still don't have any. So, oh well, what are you gonna do? All right. Well, again, thanks for being here. We're gonna go ahead and talk tonight about development, basically lifespan development, talking about the psychology of going from conception to death, basically studying the entire lifespan. This is going to be chapter 9. I'm going to do chapter 9. Oh, by the way, I did redo the syllabus. So, FYI, the syllabus has been redone to put new dates or new lectures. So, we're going to skip chapter 8 and we're just going to go right to chapter 9. And talk about lifespan development. So, as you might guess, lifespan development is all about, uh, you know, what the psychology is of infancy, what the psychology is of childhood, what the psychology is of adolescence, middle age, old age, and what is the psychology around dying, around death. That's essentially the entire area. There has been a lot. This is another one of those areas that has a huge amount of research in it. We start with talking about, as soon as I can page my way over there in my little lecture guide here. I forgot to go to the beginning when I was reviewing this earlier today. There we go. So the lifespan development is really looking not only at the physical development. In other words, when you grow up, right? As you guys know, your body passes through many changes as you're growing up. Most of you are very young and have just recently passed out of the puberty phase, which was stressful. At least for me, it was. um, and now but this is going to be happening this has happened ever since the moment you were conceived. As a matter of fact, your body is constantly going through changes right now. Right now you're in the prime of your life, you're young, and you're in your 20s or in your early or late teens, and your body's functioning the best it's ever going to function, trust me. When you hit about when you get close to 30, you're going to start noticing some things changing. You're going to slow down a little bit. When you're hit 40, you're going to notice things not only changing but breaking. But 50, you'll get used. So that's essentially what we're looking at, not only the physical changes that are associated with lifespan development, but also the mental changes, which happens cognitively and mentally to people as they age and change. Um, one of the big issues when we're looking at this is like, for example, if you've ever watched like if you ever watch like a bean plant grow, the bean plant sort of grows and it looks like it's kind of like on a straight line. It's just it grows a few millimeters every day and it grows and grows and grows and it sort of just goes on this nice smooth curve. Is growth like that, or is it in spurts? Is it you build something and then nothing happens for a little while, and then all of a sudden you build a bunch more stuff, and then nothing happens for a while, then you build a bunch more stuff? Turns out growth is like the second option. It's happens in spurts. As a matter of fact, there was some recent research that came out not too long ago that where this woman took very precise measurements of babies as they were developing, and she took measurements of their length and the size of their head as they were developing. And when you have kids, the pediatrician does that. You know, they'll lay them down on the table and measure them with a tape, and then put a tape around their head, and they'll say, okay, this is how your kid's growing, right? Um, and then later on, when you're looking at the chart, you see this line, this progressive line. It's like, oh, my little baby's growing along a straight line. But when you measure like every day or twice a day for a long time, what you end up seeing are spurts of growth. So the little baby will like grow a lot, bones will grow, and they'll get taller, and then they'll stop. And then a few weeks later, they'll hit another spurt, and then they'll stop. And it's really interesting that our bodies work like that, because it turns out that for pretty much anything you look at, any life cycle thing, whether it's growth, bone growth, or eye development, or hair development, or cognitive development, it happens in spurts. In little spurts. Some of you may remember back when you were, maybe around 10 years old, 11 years old, when you had. Did any of you ever have growing pains in your bones when you were growing? Adriana, you probably did, because you're like tall people when their bones are getting real long. That happens to tall people. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mostly like in my back of my hamstrings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I had
because
a
you're
couple like in my arms,
Yep.
but
Yeah, because you're sitting there and your bones all of a sudden decide to start stretching, and your
yeah.
muscles have to stretch along. And sometimes, for some kids, that causes some real severe pain. I mean, their bones hurt, and it's like, and they go through like 2 or 3 weeks of this, and then all of a sudden it stops, and then it'll come back maybe a few more weeks later, and it's those little growth spurts that are
Like
happening.
I know people that have done it, like in school we were like 7th grade. They would have the growing pains in like their shin area. And I also ran track, so they would have like shin splints on top of growing pains, and it was
Exactly.
just terrible.
That's horrible pain. Yeah, that's a lot of pain. Absolutely.
Yes.
And of course, the other major debate that we have talked about in class before is the nature versus nurture debate, right? Is your growth and development based on your genes, or on your environment, or a combination of both? And of course, the answer is a combination of both. It's both, right? Um, and so one of the things that makes the study of development so hard is that we have to figure out what contributes at any given time to development. We know there's a genetic component, we know there's an environmental component. And one of the things that researchers have to figure out is what from the genes are contributing, what from the environment is contributing, how are the genes affecting the environment, and how is the environment affecting the genes. All of those interactions have to be figured out. That's one of the reasons it has taken us so long to like figure things out, like for example how children develop. I mean, that's a very, very hard question to answer right now, because we don't know, because of the complexity involved. There's been a lot of theories, 290 with some lifespan theories. um Probably the most hilarious theory, my personal favorite, is Freudian theory, Freudian psychosexual theory, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we start talking about personality and other types of issues. But Freud was one of the first people to sort of put together this notion that human beings go through stages of development in their personalities. Um, the problem, well, there were a lot of problems with Freudian theory. One of the problems is that it's not scientific. He put his theories together based on his observations of working with his patients that he had. But Freud talked about multiple stages of development that humans went through, starting from when you're very, very little. The first stage of development in Freud's theories is called the oral stage of development, like ORAL, oral stage of development. And this is the first stage of development that you go through when you're a little baby. Um, when you're a little baby, one of the things that you do is you put things in your mouth. You put everything in your mouth. And that's how babies sense the world. That's one of the things they do is they put things in their mouth to see what it tastes like, what it feels like, etc. If then mom and dad come along, society comes along and says, don't do that. You cannot be putting stuff in your mouth all the time. It's bad for you. And this sets up a conflict. It sets up a conflict between what you want to do, put things in your mouth, and what you don't, and what you're told to do to not put things in your mouth. So this conflict is something that has to be resolved. If it's resolved normally by you just sort of accepting what you have to do, learning what you have to do, you get to move on to the next stage. If, however, you don't successfully resolve that conflict, you get trapped in that stage of development, and you're trapped in what's called the oral stage. You have an oral fixation. And Freud said that people that are stuck at the oral stage of development because they couldn't resolve that conflict end up doing things like overeating, smoking, drinking, lots of mouth related stuff, right? So he thought that that was one of the causes of like things like overeating and smoking was being stuck at the oral stage of development. If, however, you successfully navigate that, you get to be about 2 or 3 years old, and you're pooping your life away in your diaper, right? You're perfectly happy just pooping and peeing in your diaper. Then all of a sudden, they start telling you, no, you have to go in this little bowl. You start having to get toilet trained. And that sets up the next stage of development in Freud's cycle, the anal stage of development, right? If you have oral, you got to have anal, right? Just like a good porn site, right? And so what happens is, you set up the conflict again. The conflict is I want to poop whenever I want, wherever I want. And versus no, you have to poop in the toilet when you feel, you have to go, and you have to hold it until you get to the toilet. If you successfully navigate that, you get to pass on to the next stage of development. Um, If you don't, however, you're stuck in the anal stage of development, which is sounds like a wonderful stage to be stuck in, but it's I guess it's actually not. How many of you have ever heard the term anal retentive? You ever heard that term? You ever heard anal retentive? Somebody being described as, or usually it's shortened to anal. Oh, she's so anal, or he's so anal. You ever heard that before? That is a short phrase. When we say somebody's anal retentive, what we mean to say is they're very detail oriented. Um, and Freud uh, theorized that people became very detail oriented if they chose to resolve the conflict by holding in their poop, by retaining their poop, just like squeezing their cheeks together and saying, oh hell no, I'm gonna poop wherever I want. You're not gonna tell me where to poop, right? And so I'm gonna retain my poop. And if you get stuck at that stage, you end up being like this very neat, detail-oriented person. If, however, you resolve expulsive, you crap wherever and whenever you want. You keep doing it, and you just explode your poop everywhere. And people that are stuck at the anal stage as anal uh, um, not anal retentive, anal expressive, they are messy slobs, basically messy slobs. So the explanation for anal expulsive versus anal retentive is that you have these neat people versus these messy people, right? So if you've seen, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Harold and Kumar, go to White Castle, the movie. Harold would be anal retentive. He's a very neat, organized guy, and then Kumar would be the messy slob, right? He would be more anal expulsive, right? So, um, but anyways, Freud's theory of psychosexual development is all based on his notions of sexuality and the development of the personalities. And we'll talk more about that when we get more into talking about different personality theories. Another theory of development that's presented in. Oh, can somebody go on mute? I think it's Guadalupe. There you go. Thank you. I think. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Erikson's theory of development he came up with a uh, very precise theory of development, based on his years and years of research, where we go through stages of development in our social interactions. Okay, our social interactions with folks. And Erikson looked and saw that theorized. Erikson theorized that we had 8 stages of development that we go through, and these 8 stages of development are summarized in your book on page 293. Okay, the first thing we learn when we're little babies is who to trust and who not to trust. Okay, and those of you that have grown up in less than ideal circumstances or have raised kids know that this is true, right? I mean, one of the things that you learn early on is trust. And Erikson argued that learning who to trust and who not to trust was just as important as learning about nourishment and comfort and warmth. I mean, it was really important because that establishment of who you can trust and who you can't trust is going to be the basis for everything else that you learn, everything else. And obviously, how do you know, how do you learn trust? I mean, think about that. How does a little baby that's 4 months old learn trust? Well, if I'm, yeah, through mom and dad, right? I mean, if I'm upset, somebody's going to be there to help me. Somebody's going to be there to give me what I need. If I'm hurt, somebody's going to be there to make it better. In other words, that parental relationship is going to be the number one basis of trust. If I'm around people that hurt me when I'm a little baby, I'm not going to learn trust. I'm going to be very mistrustful, and that's gonna basically ruin the rest of my life, my life development. So the next stage we go through the first stage is trust. That's usually from the age of about 0 to 1, roughly. The next stage from the ages of 1 to 3 is being on my own and being confident in myself versus being doubtful and ashamed of myself. Okay. So can I learn to be autonomous? In other words, can I learn to do things by myself? Or am I going to be full of shame for trying to do things and full of doubt for trying to do things? Okay. So once you've learned trust, the next thing you're going to learn is this autonomy. To be autonomous, autonomous is a word that means on your own. Okay. So to be autonomous versus full of shame and full of doubt. Okay. So that's the conflict you deal with there from the age of 1 or 3. If you think about it, how do you do that, right? I mean, we've all seen these like helicopter parents that like do everything for their kids, right? That they don't let them do anything. They don't let them, and that's not the way to raise kids, right? You got to let kids especially when they're the age of 1 or 3, you got to let them get out there. Yeah, you gotta let them get out there and fail and fall down and make mistakes and learn and learn that they can actually do things on their own. That's how you teach autonomy in children, and that's the most important thing that they learn at that age in stage 2 in Erikson's development. Once you pass that, you go to stage 3. This is from about 3 to 6. This is about when you start going to school, right? Kindergarten, first grade. And this is where we deal with initiative versus guilt. In other words, taking the initiative on some things versus feeling guilty about about offending somebody or crossing boundaries or upsetting somebody, right? So for example, let's say, God forbid, you grew up with a crazy bipolar mother, right? And you're trying, and anything you do, she's going to be all over you, say, don't do that, that's wrong, that you'll stop that right now, right? If you try to do something, well, that's going to really mess you up in terms of like messing up your ability to take initiative on something. Whereas if you're in a more supportive environment, um, your parents going to allow you to take initiative on things and to do things, and of course they're going to be watching you to make sure you don't like stick a fork in the in the power outlet, but they're going to make sure that that you feel responsible enough in yourself to be able to take initiative to do things, right? So that's usually resolved around the age of 6-ish. From the age of 7 to 11, we go to stage 4, which is in industry, hard work, versus inferiority, right? And this is where you develop self-confidence. This is where you develop your self-confidence in your abilities. Or instead of having self-confidence in your abilities, you feel a sense of inferiority for the things that you can't do well, right? So somebody with true self-confidence is somebody who knows what they can and cannot do, right? They know what they can do, they know what they're good at, and they know what they're not good at. And the things that they're not good at, they're willing to learn and get better at. But somebody who may have been exposed to an environment where they are made to feel bad when they fail is going to grow up with this sense of inferiority. It's like, oh, you didn't, you weren't able to color inside the lines. Oh, you're such a dummy. Oh, those little comments like that really end up developing a strong sense of inferiority in these kids. And this is the time at which they're having this competition between, am I good enough? I'm 7 years old, I'm 8 years old. I can run, walk, talk, I can pick things up. Am I good enough now to start learning and doing things? Or every time I try to do something, is somebody telling me it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's broke, you did it wrong, right? That's the battle that we fight at that age, right when we're starting to, really learn how to control the world. From the age of 12 to 18, this is a very big time for identity. This is really when we start going through and identifying, what do I want to be in this world? Where do I want to be in this world? How do I want to be viewed in this world? And a lot of you are just coming out of this some of you that are 19, 20 years old are just coming out of this. You've just you went through the middle school years and the high school years where you're like, which group do I want to associate with? Which people do I want to associate with? How do I want to be viewed in the world? What do I want my identity to be? um and this is, there's a lot of experimentation that goes on here with different identities. Back in my day, the experimentation was really limited to clothes and culture and things like that. But today, it's extended into like gender and orientation and stuff like that. So there's a lot of experimentation that goes on at this age to really, and this is the time when you're trying to either establish an identity, whatever that is, or you're confused about your identity. You don't know what you want to be or how you want to be it, right? So, and that's the battle, is trying to establish some identity that works for you, or failing at that and having a confused identity. These would be the people, for example, that maybe they're gay, but they have a tremendous sense of like guilt or shame about it, or they don't feel right about being the race they are, right? There's the self-loathing whites and the self-loathing blacks, things like that. These are the types of things that can cause the different types of identity confusion. um, Once you've in early adulthood, the next challenge that we're faced with in Erikson's world is the idea of intimacy, being with somebody you love and being somebody who loves you back, or isolation, the being away from everybody, right? So, not the kind of isolation we have now, right? Um, but really, it's this notion of wanting to establish intimacy with somebody else, or just wanting to be completely isolated, right? And this is more than just like finding a husband or a wife or a significant other for the rest of your life. It's not only that, but it's also friendships, relationships with your family. All of that. All of that is bound into this. And who was that?
Oh, my bad. That was me. That was my.
that was cool. See, we're talking about kids, so
Sorry, my bad. Sorry, everyone.
perfect timing. So your kid wanted to talk about how he's like totally well developed in all these areas. um but anyway, getting back to intimate, so it's this early, and this is the stage where you guys are at right now, right? This is, for most of you, you're between 19 and 29 years old, and you're in Erikson's intimacy versus isolation stage. And one of the things you're probably working out in your head is, yeah, I'm in school right now. I want to get a job. I want to, have a nice life. But you're also thinking about, well, who do I want to be with the rest of my life, right? If you don't have anybody right now, or if you're with somebody right now, you're thinking, do I want to be with this clown the rest of my life? Right? It's like you're still, you're like going through this and figuring out, uh, you're also thinking, well, intimacy also involves career, right? What career do I want to have? Who do I want to interact with, for the rest of my life? So those are the sorts of things that we're working out in stage 6. Stage 7, that's the one I'm in right now. This is from the age of about 30 to 64. And this is generativity versus stagnation. And this is really where you start asking yourself, this is the conflict that comes up. Have I generated and done enough in the world, or have I not contributed? Have I stagnated? Have I generated a lot, or have I stagnated? And really, this is one of the fundamental questions that you ask yourself as you approach your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, right? You're like, what have I done? What have I done with my life? Has it been enough? Do I have any regrets in my life? Things like that. How have I contributed to society? And how have I contributed to a family, having a family, right? Um, I think, that I know a lot of guys, my age that have a problem with this. They're like not real happy where they're at in life and whatnot. I personally am very happy where I'm at in life. I think for me, my most important contribution to the world is, raising my kids properly, making sure that they're good human beings, right? So to me, that's the most important thing. But it's also the other important thing in the world for me is teaching, right? Just sort of passing on my knowledge to, whoever wants to sit and listen to me, right? That's the other thing too. So in terms of what I've contributed, me personally, as a 55-year-old guy, I feel like I've contributed quite a lot. And it's for me, it's been pretty good. But there's some people that don't feel that way about what they've done in their lives, and they feel pretty bad about it. I think, one of the things that you want to do at your age, at your young age, is sort of ask yourself, well, you know, what do I want people to say about me when I'm dead? Right? What is it that I want people to when I'm gone? What do I want to have left behind? Right? That's a really important question you should ask yourself, and that's one of the things that'll help you later to deal with this conflict that Erikson talks about. Then finally, the last thing is, getting ready to die. Basically, the stage 8, integrity versus despair. This is basically where you assess and make sense of life and the meaning of your contribution. So this is, you're going to die soon, right? You pass 65, you're going to die, and you're like, okay, what what is the sum total of my life? Right? Have I, it's too late for me now to do anything about it because I'm like 75 years old or whatever it is, right? But what have I done with my life? Right? Is it worthwhile? Have I had a good life? And you can face your life with integrity, saying and accept everything you've done with integrity, or you can despair about it and feel bad about it, right? Um, but the point of Erikson's theory is two, right? Or 2 points, right? The first point is he wanted to talk about these stages of development. This is a big thing in not all, but a lot of developmental research, is the fact that they talk about how we go through these different stages. And you have to pass through each stage in order to be successful, right? And the other thing is, his stages of development were very much geared toward our social development. He was really talking about how we develop psychologically and socially in our interactions with others. One of the things that he wanted to try to explain was why there's so many messed up people in the world. Hey! Oh, what a cute little boy. I see your little boy, Matthew. What's your name? What's his name?
Junior.
Oh, I had to ask. Well, Junior, it's nice to meet you, Junior.
Hi.
So how old are you, Junior?
How old are you?
4. Okay, so you're in so you are in the initiative versus guilt stage of Erikson psychosocial stage of development. So hopefully your daddy right now is encouraging you to take initiative and get things done and not making you feel bad when you do stuff. Okay? So if you can pass through that, you'll be doing good. Anyway. Oh, what a cutie pie. All right, so let's see. Now, stages of development. The next guy we're going to talk about is Jean Piaget, and in English it's Jean Piaget, but it's Jean Piaget. There's a picture of him at the top of page 294. So the old little guy with the beret. Piaget is actually one of those guys you really want to read about. I would strongly encourage you, at the very least, to check out the Wikipedia article on Piaget, because he's one of those guys that has made some significant contributions to Western civilization. Uh, he's he studied children for a long time. He was Swiss, studied kids for a long time, and developed one of the first comprehensive theories of cognitive development. So Erikson was about social development, right? How we develop our social skills. One. Piaget is about cognitive development, how we process information. Okay, and one of the now whether or not Piaget's right, I don't know. He's kind of right, but there's been a lot of critique of his theories over the years. Um, but there is one very important point that you can take out of Piaget's work. And the fact is that children are not miniature adults. Okay. Children think completely differently. They live in a completely alternate universe from adults. Their universe is not our universe at all. Styles are completely different, and that's why it's very that's why you really can't reason with a child the way you reason with an adult. I remember just not that long ago, I guess it was last year sometime, um, I was taking a trip. I went to Miami early last year, and when I was coming back, I was at the airport in I think it was, I don't even, Atlanta. I think it was. Yeah, it was the Atlanta airport, and I was going to get some food, and I went to the Mickey D's there at the airport, and there was this kid who was screaming her lungs out, just screaming, "I want this! I want!" Just screaming and screaming and screaming. And the mother just like, "Now, is that the way big girls act?" And of course, you can imagine that that had absolutely zero effect on this little girl, right? This little girl continued to scream and scream, and people were looking at each other. We were like really embarrassed for this, for this idiot kid. But the thing that struck me was, this woman, the mother, was trying to communicate with her child like it was an adult, right? If you think about it, is that how big girls act? You have to be able to take the perspective of somebody else, right? You have to say, okay, what is a big girl? How do they think? How would they act? And not, what is a big girl? How do they think? And not only that, but how do they think in this situation? Right? What would they do? Children aren't able to do that. They cannot do that. And as a result, if you say that to a kid, it's not going to work. What you should do is give them something they can understand, right? Pick them up, haul them away, and put the fear of God into them. Say, if you keep doing that, I'm going to beat the crap out of you, or whatever, right? But you have to speak in terms that they can understand, because what that woman was saying to that kid, and it's obvious why that kid was spoiled the way she was, because this woman was trying to talk to her like she was a little person, and she's not. And one of the ways we can understand that is by looking at Piaget's stages of development. He laid out some stages of development that we go through as we age, just kind of like Erikson did. The first stage of development in Piaget's framework happens from roughly the age of 0 to 2. Now, these ages, by the way, are very, very rough. Okay, very rough. You go through Piaget's sensory motor stage of development. And really, this is the stage of development where the baby is learning what's in the world, what is out in the world. And they're experiencing the world not only through their senses, but also through their actions. In other words, if I touch something, something falls down, right? This is the stage when, as soon as they start walking, one of the things you'll see a lot of babies do is they'll go into the kitchen, open the cabinet, and start pulling out pots and pans. I don't know if you've ever seen babies do that. But what they're learning is the concepts of shapes and colors and sounds, and the fact that things can be stored inside of boxes and all of these other things. That's what they're learning. They're learning about how the world is set up and operates in a very, very, fundamental way. One of the things that babies experience at this age and develop at this age is called object permanence. And basically, the way object permanence works is, so right now, you see my bottle of water, right? Now it's going to go out of your view. Now, did that bottle of water disappear? No, it didn't, right? As a grown adult, you know that this bottle of water is still over here, and there it is again, right? No, it didn't disappear. Very young babies, younger than about 6 to 8 months of age, don't understand that. For babies that are very young, out of sight is out of mind. Okay, out of sight is out of mind. If something disappears out of their visual field, it's gone. It literally disappeared off the face of the earth. Okay, that's why little babies love this game so much. Peekaboo, peekaboo. Babies love that game because when you have your face covered, you're literally gone to them, disappeared, and then you magically appear, and they love you and they laugh. So they don't develop the sense of object permanence. In other words, object permanence is, if I can't see the object anymore, I know it's still there, right? That's what object permanence is, right? You guys have object permanence, so you know that this bottle is not winking in and out of existence, right? It exists. Uh, Babies, they will develop object permanence usually before their first year. The other thing they have is stranger anxiety, right? So, little babies are pretty, should be pretty cool with mom and dad. We'll talk about that when we talk about attachment. But they will show some, they'll start to show anxiety around strangers as they age a little bit, because they're starting to, if you remember, they're starting to learn who to trust and who not to trust, right? So from the age of 0 to 2, they're going through the sensory motor stage of development. Okay, so everything to them is really just like this plethora of colors and sounds and these weird things that are like happening. They don't understand why they're happening, right? That's basically the world of the baby. From the age of 2 to 6, from the age of 2 to 6, they go through what Piaget talked about as the pre-operational stage of development. First of all, they're starting to learn words. They're starting to learn words. This is about when the babies start learning how to talk. They start learning how to use images to represent things. So if I point to a picture of a horsey, they'll say that's a horsey, and they'll understand that that represents like a living animal out there somewhere in the real world. So they're able to use words to express what they want at a very fundamental level. They're still very self-centered. It's the world is all about them, right? They're able to use words to express the existence of things, right? Like, horsey and car and milk and juice and things like that. But they do not use logical reasoning. They cannot use logical reasoning. They cannot make the connections between I saw this and then I saw this, therefore this. They have not learned that yet. Okay. One of the things that babies do at this age from the 2 to 6 is pretend play. They like to pretend a lot. They like to pretend to do things, and for them, that's a really big deal. You know, one of the controversies that you hear about sometimes in raising kids is uh, teaching kids about Santa Claus, right? Oh, Santa Claus is going to bring you toys, right? And some people are like, "Oh, that's a terrible thing. You're lying to the child." No, you're not. You're not lying to that. That child has no conception of lying. They don't have the same conception of reality that you have. The child's conception of reality is very different. And you know that because millions of kids, billions of kids around the world have grown out of the Santa Claus phase, and they weren't pissed at their parents. They're just like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." Right? When I was a little kid, it was one thing. Now it's another thing, right? Um, the other thing that characterizes this age is an extreme egocentrism. In other words, everything, all thoughts, all concepts that children are developing at this stage relates to them. What's in it for them? What is it's about? How does this affect me? Right? So, you could be lying there dying, with your guts hanging out, and the kid's going to be like, "Hey, I'd like a drink of water," because that everything is about them, right? So children at this age are very egocentric, and which is a good thing for them because one of the things that they have to learn is how their selves affect the world. Okay, how they affect the world and how the world affects them. That's what they're learning right now. So it's important that they're egocentric in that way so that they can make that relationship between themselves and the world. That's the sense that they're building right now. And of course, the other thing that happens from the age of 2 to 6 is language development. I can remember when we were raising our kids. Our kids started talking when they were less than 2 years old, and but boy, by the time they hit 2 or 3, it was like explosion of language. It was just, and why? And the reason they're doing that is because they're building up their repertoire, their schema of the world by asking all those questions. Um,
Hey,
once
Dr.
you
Love.
pass through, yo, who's that?
It's funny that you mentioned about it's me, Christine,
Hey,
Chris,
Chris.
and I just recently had my sister's little ones over. They spent the night. Um,
Okay.
I was trying to help her out in school and all that good stuff. And my daughter, it's been a while since I've been around little kids, and and I forgot, that part about they don't understand the concept of lying.
Yep.
I know that, but like I said, I don't hang around with little ones anymore. All the kids in our family are older.
Right.
And so I caught myself arguing with my 7-year-old niece for like, a good 3 minutes and telling her that and you're right, you can't reason or ration with them. And they
Right.
just I guess, because I've been on call and I've been working a lot. So I just like was tired and I'm over here arguing with her, like, no, you're lying. And she's looking at me like, what do you mean? And, and I'm over here. I just kicked myself in the ass. I'm like, you're so stupid. Why do you even bother? You just wasted 3 minutes of your life and energy. And
no, exactly.
I felt so bad because she's just staring at me,
Yep.
And I know this because, like I said, when my daughter, had her cousins over,
Yeah.
who spilled the milk? Who made the mess?
I don't know. Yeah, and they literally,
So
they literally have not made the connection. Yeah.
I don't care who cleaned it. I don't care who messed it up. All of y'all are cleaning it.
Exactly.
So, here I was. My poor niece was frightened of me. She never seen me,
Oh.
I had to apologize. Oh my God, let me go buy you 10,000 toys. I'm sorry because this is not your fault. This is not your fault.
Yeah.
You don't know that you're lying, but I'm gonna
Exactly.
show
Exactly.
you the difference here. So, but it's funny, that just popped in my head. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe
That
it.
is a
I just did that.
perfect example. Perfect example. Yeah. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad.
Well, I constantly, preach that to my sister because
Yeah.
she wants to sit them down and rationalize and explain to them. And I said, first of all, sis, you're bad at explaining things. I was like, second, they're not even listening to you. They're waiting for you to shut up so they can go watch cartoons or go play.
Exactly.
So,
Well, yeah.
I constantly told her those things, but I just completely forgot about it myself.
Exactly. And you can explain things, but you have to put it in terms of what's going to happen to them, right? Like you're going to do this and then you're going to do this and then you're going to do this, right? Yeah, but I hear some people trying to like talk about like, what's going on in somebody else's mind. It's like there's no way they're ever going to get that because they're so egocentric. They're so strongly focused on just themselves, right?
Sir, and I can't break her of that habit.
No, it's just the way that's just the way they are. Yep.
She thinks she's explaining. I said, I don't even understand what you're telling them. I'm like, you just don't, you're already explaining things that they don't even understand, sis. I'm just tell them, hey, don't do that again. Move forward and let's keep going. But yeah, she wants to sit them down. When you do this, you're hurting somebody else's feelings, and when you hurt somebody else's feelings, they have a bad. She wants to go.
No, yeah, that's totally not good for that age.
You in the face. So just stop already.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point that you made.
Perfect example. Perfect example. Oh, actually, I'm showing it's just after 8. Why don't we take a quick break? Take a quick bio break. Come back at about 8:12, 12 minutes after the hour, and we'll take a quick break. I'll leave. I'm going to leave the meeting open. So.
Dr. Lopez,
Yo.
I forgot to tell you at the beginning of the session. I should have emailed you. We just got put on call, emergency on call. So, if I leave early, will I be like
No, you're fine.
job credit?
No, that's okay. That's what. Yeah, I do. One thing I forgot to mention is I will take attendance through the list. I can crank out a list of who attended. So yeah, if you have to leave early, you got to leave early. But thanks for telling me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, we bit most hospitals, they have a code. They have lots of codes. One of the codes that they use in emergencies, which Katrina, you're not allowed to leave the hospital if you're a nurse. So
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah.
it's a disaster code. So I don't, I don't foresee that happening, but
you never know. You never know.
I'm just letting you know ahead of time.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I hope it doesn't for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, it happened during Katrina. I was there for 48 hours. So
wow.
That's not fun.
Yeah. Ugh. So, yeah, let's hope it doesn't happen again. All right. So let's see. So is everybody back? I guess everybody's back. Let's see. Yeah, I guess everybody's back. So by the way, guys, I did mention Freud, and there's a really good show on Netflix. If you have a chance to watch it, there's a series called Genius of the Modern World, and it's this historian, this lady. I forgot her name already, but she's a famous historian, and she actually talks about three of the uh, people who have shaped a lot of the modern world. She talks about Freud, Karl Marx, and Friedrich Nietzsche. They're great. They're pretty good shows. The one on Nietzsche is really good, but also the one on Freud. It's season 1, episode 3 on Netflix. It's called Genius of the Modern World. Um, so yeah, definitely if you have a chance, watch that because it's actually a pretty good show. It talks about Freud, the things that influenced Freud, and how his theories have sort of influenced the world. Definitely check that out if you got a chance. Since we're all stuck at home, so you may as well watch Netflix while you're at home. Do you have any questions so far? Any comments or questions? I was looking at the chat here. There's a toilet paper discussion going on. It's hard for me to watch the chat when I'm lecturing, but thanks for asking questions also. Oh, by the way, the survey on the poll, it said you guys basically want to have both, want to have the live lectures and want to be able to take advantage of the recorded ones, which is great. I mean, that's actually really the perfect answer because it means I'll still be here recording, and hopefully I won't be doing it alone. And the recordings will be available for you to watch if you need to. So, like if Chris has to bug out here, because the world's coming to an end, then she later on she can watch the video and catch up. Um, so anyway, let's get back to talking a little bit about Piaget. Piaget. And we stopped at at the pre-operational stage from the age of 2 to 6, the the pretend, when they're pretending. From the age of 7 to 11 is a very important developmental stage in Piaget's world. This is called the concrete operational stage, concrete operations. And when we say concrete, we mean like what you can see and feel. Okay. In other words, it's not abstract, right? It's what you can see and feel. And this is the point at which children start to understand concrete events, the causes and effects that they see in the real world, right? I fall down off my bike, I scrape my knee, it hurts. I got to get some medicine for it. They can understand those sorts of things. They can also use analogies, right? So like they can say, oh well, if I'm, if I get spanked, then it's gonna hurt just like the way it's gonna hurt the way it does all the time. Whenever my dad spanks me, or something like that. They're able to make those sorts of like logical connections. They're also able to perform basic arithmetic. So this is when you start learning, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Um, some rare children can learn past that, but they don't go past that because learning anything beyond um, the basic arithmetical operations requires more abstract thought, right? In other words, to learn differential calculus or integral calculus, I mean, that requires some abstraction, right, to understand what all those functions and integrals are doing, right? So you're not going to be able to learn that at that age because you're focused, really, your mind is focused on learning the basic rules of how concrete things work um, in the world. Um, so one of the things that you go through, one of the developmental things that you go through, the abilities that you go through, is this understanding what's called conservation, and it's kind of a funny thing. You can do this to very young children and trick them, I guess. But let me uh, let me see if I can find a picture here real quick. Um, yeah, here we go. So here's Piaget's concert. Let me share my screen real quick as soon as I get this guy up. Oh, here we go. Screen sharing going here. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. Hope you guys can see this slide. And this is Piaget's conservation task. Now, you can see that there's three containers here, container A, B, and C. Container A and B are identical, right? So if I were to put container A and B in front of a child and say, okay, which one of these containers has more fluid? The child would look at this and go, well, they look the same to me, right? Which is the correct answer. But then if you take it literally in front of the child, like in front of the child, right? You don't have to hide this, right? Take into C, okay? And then ask, okay, which one of these containers has more, A or C? A lot of kids are going to say C because it looks taller, right? Because it looks taller. And this inability to do this, or this ability to do this, is called conservation. In other words, if I were to pour that fluid into another container and ask you that question, you'd be like, well, it's the same amount, right? And that's because you understand the concept of conservation. You know that just because the fluid has changed shape doesn't mean that there's more or less of the fluid. Okay, it's the same. However, children that are very young, usually around 6 or 7 years old, cannot do this. Or a lot of kids cannot. Some can, but a lot of kids cannot do this. And they really can't do this until they're about maybe 8 or 9 years old. And that's as they develop their concrete operational abilities, right? finally, we get into the highest level of Piaget's uh, development, and that is the formal operation stage. And this usually hits right around puberty, right? So anywhere from 10 to 12, 10 to 13, right? And this is when children begin to start being able to engage in formal operations. So in other words, they can start to understand things like algebra. They can understand particular scientific models, things of that nature. They can start engaging in talking about more abstract concepts. So you can start talking to them about abstract reasoning, for example, about um, talking about imagining what's going on in the mind of another, uh, talking about empathy and justice and beauty and things like that. All of those sorts of very abstract sorts of things that that a very young child can't understand. A child in the formal operational stage in Piaget's world can understand those things. And of course, you know, if you look back at the school system, at all at all the lessons that are laid out for children. You know, you go to pre-K, right? You know, you go to like the 3 and 4 year olds. You know, what are they being taught? They're being taught colors, right? Different colors, and everything's brightly colored, and they're being taught about shapes and colors and animals, right? It's all very, and they're encouraged to play and to pick things up and to feel it, right? It's all very pre-operational. Uh, Once they get in, or very sensory motor, right? Once they get into the, or I'm sorry, pre-operational. Once they get into the concrete operational stage, we start showing them some basic, you know, laws of physics and laws of science and real fundamental stuff, mathematics and basic English and things of that nature. And then, you know, and that's through, you know, middle school. But once, you know, once they get done with middle school and they start in high school, they start doing the formal operations, learning more advanced things, more abstract things, right? um, Again, you know, the take home lesson from Piaget's work is you know, kids are not miniature adults, right? Now, I hope you can understand that a little bit better now. Kids, you know, babies, depending on their age, are going to be seeing the world in a very different way based on how young they are. And the other thing, too, is we do go through cognitive stages of development. Now, is Piaget right? Well, there's been a lot of controversy. His research, of course, is like world famous, and it generated a lot of research. For example, there's been a lot of research done on, you know, do kids really go through these stages, right? And it turns out, well, you know, some do and a lot don't. You know, some kids, you know, they have their own stages and they go through different things. And some stages of that some kids go through are a combination of different Piaget stages. So um, there's been a tremendous amount of research in this area to try to understand, you know, the cognitive development of kids, particularly in the world of language. You know, how kids develop language. Um, and you know, the bottom line is, you know, we still don't know. But I think Piaget's work has given us a really solid framework for understanding, at the very least, what things are like, you know, as a kid, and to give some parents guidance on you know, what your kid should and should not be doing at a particular age. Um, the other thing too, by the way, you know, is when parents learn about this, you know, so sometimes they kind of freak out because, like, oh my God, my child is like 7 years old and they're still in the pre-operational stage of development. I'm like, you know, don't worry about it. This is not, you know, like defined at all. You know, it's very broad, very open. Kids are going to go through different stages at different rates. So don't worry about it if your kid doesn't seem like he's passing through Piaget's stages the way he's supposed to. So we talked about Erikson's psychosocial developmental stages. We've talked about Piaget's cognitive developmental stages. Now we have one last guy to talk about, Kohlberg. Kohlberg has come up with another developmental stage theory, but instead of psychosocial or cognitive, he talks about moral development. In other words, how do we develop our morality, right? Again, the take-home lesson here is that kids are not miniature adults, right? Kids have a very different view of morality than adults do. And Kohlberg was really the first guy to sort of like come up with this theoretical framework that is illustrated on page 298 in your book. At the top of page 298, basically, kids go through 3 levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3 as they get older. And each level has 2 stages. Okay. So level 1 is the first one, is pre-conventional morality. And this is where you learn obedience. Basically, you know, if you do what you're supposed to do, you get rewarded. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you get punished, right? Very basic, fundamental form of morality, right? Your life, when you're like a little kid in the pre-conventional stage of development, um, it's all about avoiding punishment, right? Getting good things and avoiding punishment. Um, Stage 2 of the first level is individual interest. Basically, the behavior of the kids is driven by their own self-interest and their rewards, right? Their self-interest is basically get as much yummies as I can, get as much rewards as I can, and avoid as much punishment as I can. Okay. One of the interesting things about Kohlberg's theories that I forgot to mention is that it's not really tied to ages, like Piaget's theories or Erikson's theories are. It's really tied to, I guess, experience, because there's actually a lot of people, adults, that are still stuck at this, level 1 pre-conventional morality stage, right? As a matter of fact, prisons prisons are full of mostly men who still view the world at this, level 1 pre-conventional morality stage where everything's about obedience and punishment and reward. Um, and they're still, and they're stuck at stage 2 of level 1, where, everything they do is just about, getting more good stuff for them and avoiding as much painful punishment as they can. Um, that is an unfortunate, that's an unfortunate thing, but the fact of the matter is it's true, right? Um, Level 2, so if you can go through that, if you can understand the role of punishment and reward in mediating your behavior, right? Um, you can move on to the next level of moral development in Kohlberg's reasoning, and that's level 2, conventional morality. And this is the ability to reason about morality as an interpersonal set of rules, right? So basically, your reasoning and your behavior at stage 3 in level 2 is driven by social approval. Okay. So, what you do, what you consider to be good behavior, what you consider to be moral, just behavior, is based upon that which is socially approved. Okay? Socially approved. Moving on from that to stage 4, we start to getting into authority. Okay. Your behavior, your morality, obeying authority, and conforming to social order. Okay, basically obeying the laws, right? So, you hear a lot of people, that are still stuck in this stage 4 level of conventional morality, when it's like, okay, these undocumented people that are in the country right now, they're breaking the law, right? They're breaking the law. Therefore, they suck and they need to be, exported out of this country because they broke the law. It's okay to be in this country if you don't break the law, but they broke the law, right? That's very much of a stage 4 authoritarian sort of viewpoint, right? Because you're ignoring the fact that, well, these people had really, really, really shitty lives where they came from, right? And they're going to die if they go back, right? So what about that? How should that weigh into the decision, right? um But stage four, that level, that sort of mid-level of stage four, is all about just essentially authority, obeying the rules, and making sure that whatever society feels is orderly, that's what you conform yourself to, right? Um, Developing a higher sense of morality, we move on to what Kohlberg called the post-conventional morality. This is actually a stage that a lot of people don't get to. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. And this is at stage five, social contract. This is really behavior that's driven by balance of social order and individual rights, right? One of the huge things that we talk about when we talk about ethics and morality is like, what is this ideal balance between my rights as an individual versus what society needs to have as a functioning world, right? If you look, for example, if you look at the Constitution of the United States, that thing is like the Constitution is all about balancing individual rights with you know um, society's rights, the rights of this of the group of the people, and the rights of the state. Right? That's what it's all about. And it's at stage five morality, you start being able to reason in terms of what's that relationship, right? What's that relationship between my individual rights and the social contract out there, right? We see this for example, we see this in the abortion debate, right? So you've got the notion of individual rights, right? A woman's autonomy over her own body versus the rights of another individual, namely the baby, to live, right? uh, you know, where does that line get drawn, right? How do we resolve that? That's pretty much an irresolvable conflict in our current society, but it's one of those problems that, you think about and you think about, okay, well, you've got this, you've got this very well reasoned out individual right, that my body is my body, and then but you've got this other individual right that every human should have a chance at life, right? Because you had a chance at life, why shouldn't this other human have a chance at life? So what's right for society, right? What's the best for society? And of course, back in 1972, the Supreme Court said, well, the Supreme Court basically said, yeah, you know what, abortion really sucks. It's a horrible, terrible thing, but things would suck even more if we banned it, right? So let's not ban it, right? Let's let women make a choice and do whatever they got to do, right? And then finally, the highest level of moral development in Kohlberg's viewpoint is stage six, is sort of this development of a universal ethics. In other words, your behavior and your reasoning about ethics is based on internal moral principles. So you're not basing your morality on whether or not you're going to get punished. You're not basing your morality entirely on what society thinks. You're not basing your morality on what your mom's going to think, right? You're basing your morality on your principles that you hold dear, right? That in Kohlberg's view, that is the highest level of morality. Not only basing your ethics on these principles, but also being able, right, being able to articulate those principles, to describe them, and then being able to live by them, to be able to not only describe them but also live by them. So all of that is part of this notion of universal ethics. This notion that you have principles that you live by. It's a very interesting theory. I personally have found it very relevant because you can always, when you talk to people, you can identify, what stage of development they're in, when you're dealing with prisoners, with guys that have been in prison, you see that they're stuck at stage one or stage two. When you talk to a lot of, authoritarian conservatives, they're stuck at, level two, and then there's other people that are stuck at level three. So, it's a very interesting way to look and understand how it is that people develop their sense of morality, right? Um, So I assume we all know how babies are made, right? If you haven't seen that, there's millions of videos online that will show you that how that process works. It's like the most videoed thing in the world, right? But if we talk about development, I don't know if I can actually show you this video. Video real quick. Actually, I know I can show it to you. I just don't know if you can hear it. All right, so bam. So I think it was this one here. Yeah. Oops, let me stop that real quick. All right, so let me share my screen here real quick. All right, so there's my screen. You guys hear the music? Okay, well, there's music in the background. There's no voice, there's just music. It's like that creepy music that they play when they're, but anyway. So since you can't hear the music, I will just talk to this. It's really loud, by the way. Let me see if I can turn this down a little bit. Volume control right here. So what's happening? Whoops. No. What's up, Guillermo? So what's happening here is that these little guys, these are the sperm cells, right, making their way into an egg, right? And this is a woman's egg, of course, and they're all in there trying to make their way in. There's millions of them. Eventually, one does make its way in, like this little guy here, and he goes into the nucleus of this egg, breaks off his tail. Yep, breaks off his tail, and he deploys his package. His package is DNA. He's giving 23 chromosomes to the female's 23 chromosomes, and this sexual reproduction creates an individual with a complete set of 46 chromosomes. Um, the fertilized egg immediately starts to split, and while it's splitting, the fertilized egg rolls down the fallopian tube, which apparently looks like a plush carpet from the 70s, and makes its way into the uterus, where it implants in the uterus. So it's going down the fallopian tubes. Yay! Ooh, little ball tumbling down. I don't know if it really looks like this, but now notice by the time it hits the uterus. Now notice by the time it gets to the uterus, it's already split multiple times. So you're pregnant and you don't even know you're pregnant yet, right? So now the fertilized, now the little blastula embeds into the wall of the uterus and starts the process of growing. So it develops a placenta so that it can start eating yummy food from mommy. Now, one of the things I want you guys to look at here. Hang on a sec. Let me freeze this real quick. What's developing right here on top of this ball? This little guy right here is called the neural tube. The neural tube is essentially this. It's like this little patty of neural tissue. And what's going to happen is you're going to see this patty of neural tissue curl up and form a tube. And that tube ultimately becomes your brain and your spinal cord. Okay? But watch as this happens, right? The neural tube is developed. And here we're going to the walls here, the neural tube. Now see how the edges are joining together? Now this front part of the neural tube here is going to be the brain. And the spinal cord is going to be all the way down here. You can see that the tube is completely formed, and now what you have are this little lump here at the top. That's going to develop into the brain. This is going to be the spinal cord right here. And see these little segments? These little segments are going to be the nerves that grow out into the body, and these are the roots of the nerves that are going to grow out to the body. Now, some of you, if you've ever heard of something called neural tube defects, neural tube defects are birth defects that are caused by an incompletely formed neural tube. What happens is if you saw this, right? Let me show you this again real quick. If you saw this, you see how it's all joining together? What happens in neural tube defects is those edges don't completely seal shut like right now. And you can have some horrible things happen to the baby if the neural tube doesn't seal up. So if it doesn't seal up here at the top, you could end up with a child, for example, born without a brain. Uh, um, this does happen, rarely, but it does happen. Sometimes you'll have the neural tube not close up here along one of the edges, and this is where you have the development of scoliosis. You guys have heard of scoliosis with a crooked spine, and that's a neural tube defect. So there's all kinds of defects that can happen if the neural tube doesn't close up correctly. But this one did, and so the rest of the baby is going to start developing. So there's the hearts. There's the umbilical cord, right? And you can see the head starting. This is the brain. What's going to be the brain, right? And we're still talking this is maybe like 3 weeks after fertilization, 3 or 4 weeks after fertilization. This is all the heart muscles starting to synchronize their beating together. So right around 5 weeks of age, the little heart starts forming and it starts beating on its own for the first time. So here we have where the arms are going to develop, and here's where the face is going to come from all of this here. At this age, you look like a little shrimp. So and as you start to develop, start growing and growing and growing. And now watch how the face emerges. I want you to see how the face emerges. Oh, we're going to see the hands emerge first. Yeah, there's a little hand coming out. Looks like a little mitten. And right now we're at about 10 weeks of age. And now there's the eye. That's where the eye is going to be. Right there. Piece of the brain that came in and developed in there. And there's the little feet developing. And this is where the face emerges. Watch this. That's the face emerging. Now, some of you may have, let me play that again real quick. So notice here how this little space gets sealed up and forms the nose. Some of you may have seen folks with like the cleft palate, and they have to have surgery to have their palates fixed, and it goes all the way into their mouth. And that cleft palate is caused whenever the face doesn't correctly form. And right now we're at about 12 weeks of development here. You can see there's already lots happened in 12 weeks. Right now the baby does look like a space alien, so they do grow out of that at some point. There we go. See, starting to look more like a baby now, right? And about this age, they do start moving and sucking their thumb and wiggling around. This is about the age where the mother can report feeling little flutters. What are called little flutters? She may not quite know she's pregnant. Yeah, she should know by now, but some women don't. And yeah, they start moving and wiggling their toes and it's usually about this age where you can actually see them in an ultrasound. And what's going on in the brain right now is a miracle. It's just another way to put it. I mean, it's just a miracle. Right now, the brain is growing like super quick. All of these neurons are just spreading out and wiring themselves together. We don't know how this happens. We have no idea how this happens. We do know what happens when it goes wrong, obviously, but you end up with mental retardation, autism, all kinds of things when this process goes wrong. Um, but these are billions of neurons that are wiring themselves up, and wish we could understand how they know where to go. Which we don't. And this is all happening in the first, well in the first trimester of pregnancy. Everything that you've seen here is happening in the first trimester. And there we start, once the baby starts moving around, they start kicking around and sucking their thumb and sometimes they suck their toes. But one of the things that you need to be one of the things that you need to be aware of is that all of that you saw, basically by the end of the first trimester, by the end of the first 3 months of pregnancy, all of the systems, the heart, the lungs, the eyes, the brain, the feet, the hands, everything's been laid out. Everything's built. It's just, at that point, it's just getting bigger. Oops. My Firefox real quick. Okay. My Firefox kept playing. So I was like, and one of the things you need to be aware of is the fact that a lot of there's some birth defects that can occur if a baby is exposed to poisons in the environment. These poisons are usually referred to as teratogens. Teratogen, it's a Teratogen. It's introduced on page 302. A teratogen is a chemical, an external chemical that causes birth defects. It's from the Greek word teratos, meaning monster. So teratogen is a chemical that creates a monster, basically. Um, and The most sensitive time in development is the first trimester. That's the most sensitive time because that's when all the main systems are being laid out and built. So if the child gets exposed to a teratogen at that age, it could result in death or severe birth defects. One of the teratogens that used to be common, it's not so common anymore, is the rubella virus. That's why when you're pregnant, one of the things that they ask is, have you had a measles shot? And they will make sure that you're not exposed to rubella because the rubella virus can cause birth defects. Another thing that causes birth defects is alcohol. So there's a syndrome called fetal alcohol syndrome, FAS. And there's a little chart there on page 302 that talks about all of the different effects of fetal alcohol syndrome. So if you've got a mom that likes to get liquored up a lot when she's pregnant, especially in the first trimester, she's probably going to end up with a baby with fetal alcohol syndrome. They have below average head sizes, smaller than average eye opening. Their eyes are kind of little tiny beady eyes. A very low nasal bridge and a very short little stubby nose, smaller than average mid face, and a very thin upper lip. They have all these very strange facial deformities that result from their brains being deformed. You saw the way the face was coming together. And the way the face comes together is based a lot on the shape of the brain, because your face kind of like wraps around your brain. And babies with fetal alcohol syndrome have their brains being shrunk. So their brains are being shrunk. That means their face is going to be malformed. Smoking is another, thing that can introduce problems, as well as, illicit drug use. Um, so, there's crack babies, babies that are born to crack addicted mothers. I many years ago, I was uh, joking with my class. I mentioned crack babies, and I jokingly said, "So, do we have any crack babies in the audience?" And this was a class of about 200. And believe it or not, somebody raised their hand. It was like this little girl raised her hand. And I was like, oh, I'm, oh shit, I'm sorry. And after class, she came up and like said, "Yeah, I was a crack baby. I was a crack baby." I was like, "Oh wow, so okay, you seem cool." So I guess, but so I don't tell that joke. I don't do that joke anymore. So those things you learn teaching, right? Um, so one of the things about development is, babies develop. Babies develop at different rates, right? Not every baby's the same. Babies are going to develop at different rates. So you've got, look, starting on page 305. Because we talk about what are called developmental milestones. So you talk about, um, what is your baby supposed to be doing at a certain age, right? What behaviors and things is your baby supposed to be doing? So by the time they're 2 years old, according to this chart, right, to the skills, they should be able to kick a ball and walk up and down the stairs. Personality wise, they should be able to play alongside other children and copy adults. Language, they should be able to point to objects when they're named. So be able to say, that's a horse, that's a cow, that's a car, and point to it when you say it. And then they should be able to put 2 to 4 words together to form like little sentences. Cognitive, they should be able to sort shapes and colors. See, remember that big colorful plastic ball that had the different shapes? You had to put the shapes you know, in the round shape and the round hole, and they should be able to do that, right? Um, Unlike these people that are flying and they're trying to pack their giant luggage into this little container and they're too stupid to know, right? But by 2 years old, you should be able to do that. Um, this isn't necessarily the case, right? I mean, what's going to happen is, let's say for example, you have a 2-year-old kid, and this 2-year-old kid is not using words. They're not putting words together in a sentence. Typically, what will happen at that point is, the pediatrician, whenever you take your kid in for a physical, and you have to take your kid for a physical like twice a year when they're this little, right? Because they're growing so fast. The pediatrician is going to say, okay, so is he talking or is she talking? And you're going to say, no, she hasn't said anything and doesn't communicate. And what the pediatrician is going to do is say, okay, first of all, this is well within the normal range. Okay, so don't worry about it. But what I want you to do is start working a little bit more with your child, to encourage her to talk. And here's some things that you can do to work with your child. Come back in a month and we'll see if anything's changed. So they'll let you go, and then you come back, and if nothing's changed, if the child is still the same after all the extra work, what the pediatrician will probably then do is refer you to a specialist, like to see, to assess, like, is there really some issue here that we have to deal with, right? But the bottom line is, these sorts of things they vary a lot. By age of 3, the kid should be able to climb and run and pedal a tricycle. Uh, Personality, social wise, they should be able to take turns, express many emotions, and dress themselves, which I still have trouble with that one. So, language, they should be able to name familiar things and use pronouns like he, she, they, and it, right? And finally, cognitively, they should be able to play make believe by the age of 3, work with toys and parts, that have levers and handles and things like that. By the age of 4, they should be able to catch a ball and use scissors. They should be able to play. By the age of 4, they should prefer social play as opposed to solo play. Most kids, not all kids, but most kids prefer to play in groups with other kids, right? And at that age, by the age of 4, they should have likes and interests. By that point, their personalities are really starting to come out. And they're going to start already expressing things that they like, things that they don't like, things they're interested in, things they're not interested in. They should also know some songs and rhymes by memory. So this is something, unfortunately, we don't do a lot with kids anymore, but one of the things that helps a lot with their cognitive development is to teach them songs and rhymes. That's why we have the Grimm's fairy tales and all these cute little songs from the days of the days of yore, right? That people used to sing to kids, and we should be doing that again, but we don't. They should also be able to name colors and numbers, and be starting to write letters. Very primitively, but doing it. By the age of 5, they should be able to hop and use swings, use the fork and spoon. Um, Personality, social wise, they should be able to distinguish real from pretend, right? So what's real and what's pretend. And they should also be able to engaging in social, having friends, right? And wanting to please their friends instead of always being so self-centered about themselves. They should be at that point, they should be speaking clearly and using full sentences and being able to count up to 10 at least and print some letters in basic shapes, right? In general, that's roughly what they should be able to do. Let's see. Okay. So, and again, one of the big lessons that you want to remember as you're reading the text in this book is to keep in mind, especially if you're planning on having kids, which I hope all of you are, but because you never know, but is those milestones are they're pretty variant. I mean, they're very variant. All of y'all, all of y'all are above average in intelligence, and you're probably going to marry or get with somebody who is above average in intelligence, and that means you're probably going to produce a child that is above average in intelligence. So they'll probably go through these stages a little quicker than average kids would. You hope, right? But you never know, right? It can vary a lot. Um, one of the most So to wrap up what we've talked about so far, right? We covered the different theoretical stages of development in terms of psychosocial development, moral development, and cognitive development. Talked a little bit about just the biology of development, right? These developmental stages that we go through as we go from a fertilized egg to an adult. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about one of the most important theories that underlies a lot of all of this stuff, of a lot of our psychological development, a lot of our personality development, a lot of our social development. And this is known as attachment theory. Attachment theory. And let me show you a picture real quick. So attachment is really just what it sounds like. It's how you attach yourself um, to somebody you love or somebody who's taking care of you. And show you this picture real quick. Oops, pictures aren't loading. Well, of course, the advertisements load first. Let's see. Where's the monkey? The monkey. Let's see. This will load. Oh, here we go. So let me share my screen here real quick and talk a little bit where this came from. Now, attachment. Attachment is a very deep and enduring bond um, that forms between two organisms. Obviously, what's the most important bond that you form when you're first born? With mom, right? With your mother. Um, this is the most important bond. One of the first people to study this bond, this maternal bond, was a guy named Harry Harlow, Harlow. And what Harlow did was he raised monkeys, little baby rhesus monkeys in different conditions. One set of monkeys he had raised normally. In other words, these monkeys had their mothers, and they would run to their mother for protection, and mom would take care of them and feed them. Another group of monkeys were the very unfortunate monkeys that were raised in isolation. So they were fed, by lab workers, but they were basically kept in a container that had like nothing else. So they were just completely alone. And then there were monkeys that were raised in the same container, but they were raised with this like little doll that you see here, this little fake mother that you see here with a face and with a nice warm furry body. Okay. And what Harlow wanted to do was to assess, how important this early bond is, right? How important is it for these monkeys to have this, secure base, right? My guess, famous, in this very famous study, was that, of course, the babies that were raised with their moms, they turned out fine. They developed normally. The monkeys that were raised by themselves with no contact were extremely disturbed. They grew up so that they were very isolated. They couldn't communicate. They were extremely aggressive. They would attack other monkeys. They would rape, female monkeys whenever they could. It was, they were just very, dysfunctional individuals. The monkeys that had the fake mom, they turned out pretty okay if the mom was like this sort of like realistic looking mom here with the face and the fur, and if the mom provided like food, like their little nipple. If the mom provided food and if the mom was there for them to run to whenever they were scared, these monkeys actually turned out fairly okay. And what Harlow reasoned from this was the importance of having this ability for monkeys to comfort themselves with their mother and to receive care from their mother. That's a very important part of the formation of attachment, right? Of a proper attachment. And so the formation of this bond, right, of this very intimate bond is critical to to normal development. Um, one of the early investigators. Okay, so Harlow came along, and a couple of other theorists came along, and they thought that attachment was all or none, right? You either were attached great, or you weren't attached, and your life sucked, right? It was one or the other. And that's not true. A researcher by the name of Mary Ainsworth did a very, very famous series of studies and talked about the different types of attachment that you can develop based on your experience with your mother. So one of the things that Ainsworth talked about um, was this notion of a secure base. So usually when you're a baby, your secure base is your mom or your dad, right? Your caregiver, right? So whenever you're scared, you run to your mother. Whenever you need to eat, you run to your mother. Whenever you feel happy, you run to your mother, right? That's part of a normal growing up. Um, However, based on the reaction of the mother, based on how mothers react to their babies, children can develop different types of attachment styles. And this is the thing that sort of gave us this notion that there's not just attachment or no attachment. There's these different types of attachment styles. So the one that you want, the attachment style that's good is called a secure attachment style. Okay. Um, that's the healthiest one. In secure attachment, a toddler, when you test them, they prefer to be with their parent versus a stranger. Okay, that's a normal attachment style. The attachment figure is used as a secure base to explore the environment. So, the baby, as long as the baby has mom or their secure figure there in view, they feel safe in exploring the environment. The baby gets security, or that toddler gets security from having that parental figure there, right? Whenever they get freaked out whenever their caregiver leaves, right? So whenever their caregiver leaves, they don't like it, and they're happy when their caregiver returns. Okay, so that is a secure attachment style. There's also a not so healthy attachment style called an avoidant attachment style, and this is where the child is unresponsive to the parent. So the parent's there, but the child could care less, right? Doesn't use the parent as a secure base and doesn't care if the parent leaves. Okay, which is kind of odd. The toddler reacts to the parent the same way that she reacts to a stranger. When the parent does return, the child is slow to show a positive reaction. Okay, so in other words, the kid is kind of like cool to the parent. It's like, I'm going to avoid you. Okay, and you can imagine the sorts of experiences that might lead to that, right? Like abusive type. There's resistant attachment. The children tend to show clingy behavior, very clingy behavior, but then they reject the attachment figure's attempts to interact with them. So at first they're being very clingy, but as soon as the attachment figure interacts with them, they reject it, right? The children with a resistant attachment style don't explore. They don't really explore the world the way kids with a secure attachment style do. During the separation, when they're in a strange situation and they're separated from their caregiver, they become extremely disturbed and they are angry at the parent for leaving, right? And then finally, there's children with a disorganized attachment style. They're the ones that behave very oddly whenever their parents leave in a strange situation. They'll freeze. They'll run away. They'll scream. They'll run around and scream. Um, and you can imagine, if you think about it, all of the different types of abusive, homes, abusive environments that these kids must live in to have these different types of attachment styles, right? Um, Another big area of research is this notion of, well, let me ask you this. All right. What is your concept of yourself? Think about it. Think about what, when I ask you to think about yourself, to describe yourself, to define yourself, to talk about yourself in terms of of an entity, uh, the things you can and cannot do, the things you like and dislike, um, your role in the world. Um, you know, think about that. Think about how much your concept of self drives how you behave, right? Drives how you interact with other people. So one of the big areas of research has been in this notion of, well, how do we develop this concept of self? And it's a relatively new area of research. It's not. I mean, it's for when I say relatively new, I mean, like, 40 years old, right? So in psychology, that's kind of new, right? Um, but basically, we're trying to understand, what are the factors that lead into a human being sort of developing this a good sense of self or a poor sense of self, right? So one of the things that parents can do to help children develop a good sense of self is with their different is with different parenting styles, right? Um, one of the good parenting styles that you can give is what's called the authoritative parenting style. Um, and in the authoritative parenting style, first of all, it's in a lot of ways it's the complete opposite of being uninvolved, or if you're involved, being permissive, just letting them do whatever they want, right? With an authoritative style, right? Um, you give the kid reasonable demands and reasonable limits, right? And you act as an authority figure, right? In defining what those are. Um, and you can also be flexible, right? It's also important that you're flexible. So say say your young teenager wants to hang out with his friends for the first time, right? And well, that's going to violate bedtime, and you might say, well, okay, this is really, you're hanging out with your friends for the first time at night, past 8 o'clock at night is a big deal, so we'll let my 12-year-old do that, right? And we'll kind of forego the bedtime ritual, for this one night. So basically, you're acting as a positive authority figure in the authoritarian. I'm sorry, in the authoritative parenting style. Um, Bad parenting styles would include of course, obviously not being involved at all. That's a no-brainer, and being very permissive, right? Just letting them do whatever they want whenever they want. Another not so good parenting style is the authoritarian style, not the authoritative. Authoritarian. Authoritarian parents place very high value on obedience and conforming to authority. Um, so usually the children that come out of these severely authoritarian um, parenting styles are very anxious, withdrawn, and they're generally not very happy, right? Because they're fearful everything they do might be a violation of the rules, right? So one of the things that you can do as a parent to promote a good self concept is to have this authoritative parenting style where where you work with the kid, right? You're guiding the kid, obviously, but you work with them based on their individual personalities, their individual needs, right? Um, let's see. All pretty basic there. The rest, okay, so the rest of the chapter would go into adulthood, right? And a couple of things in adulthood, right, to point out. The physical development, right? Um, so as I said, right now, you guys, most of you, right, you're in the you're in the emerging adulthood stage of your lives, right? Um, and the question becomes like, at what point are you an adult, right? Well, so the law, right, for the simple fact that there is a difference between children and adults, right? Because children don't have the same reasoning abilities that adults do. Our legal framework has legal definitions for adulthood, and it varies from locale to locale. But in general, here in the state of Texas, you're an adult when you're 18 years old, right? When you're 18 years old, you're legally an adult. And one of the things that this means is you can enter into contracts, right? But what really happens? Like what really is adulthood? It's like, well, it's not a specific line that you cross, right? Because we're still developing. Males in particular, male brains are still developing up until the age of 25. Especially the front part here, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain right here that is involved in making decisions. So there's a reason why your car insurance is so expensive as a male up until you're 25 years old, because you don't have your brain fully developed yet. You're going to do stupid things, right? Um, but so legally it's 18. Your brain's not done developing until you're 25. You can start drinking when you're 21, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. But you can start drinking when you're 21. So there's all these different like mishmash of rules that define adulthood, right? So and there's not one right answer, right? But from the age of 18 till about 25, 26, is a time of a lot of change. I mean, it's a very significant time in your life because you really are emerging out of childhood and really starting to, uh, learn the rules of the road in terms of like how to be an adult, what you need to do. So in early adulthood, again, your body is functioning pretty well. um, your physical maturation is complete, right? By the time you hit your mid 20s, you're physically you've matured. You're done. Most of us, anyway, right? Um, you may grow a little bit more in early adulthood, a little taller, but for the most part, we're done. Um, your physical abilities and your mental abilities are at their peak in your 20s. Um, This is why most athletes and even like mathematicians and chess players and very heavy cognitive loads, most of the great things that they do happen in their 20s. Even criminals, like you guys have heard of Al Capone, right? Al Capone was the gangster that ran Chicago back in the days of Prohibition, and he of course developed uh, a huge mythology around him, um, because of all the things he did, as the big boss of Chicago back in the 1930s. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is he did everything before the age of 28. He was basically everything he accomplished was before the age of 28, which is amazing, but it's not unheard of because that's the age when we are the most productive, when we're the most able to engage a lot of energy to do very demanding things. Um, I can tell you personally that I got my PhD when I was 28 years old. And I honestly, I right now I could not go back. I could not do that work again. There's no way in hell I could do that again. At my age right now, it's just I could not put myself through that laboring. It's just too hard for somebody who's older. Um, by the time you hit middle adulthood, your middle age, middle adulthood starts in your 40s, 40-ish, and extends into your 60s. Um, this is where you start gradually physically declining. So you become less strong. Your skin starts losing elasticity. Your vision changes. Your vision goes bad. Your hair starts turning gray, like mine is. And then late adulthood is the final stage of adulthood, and that's really where the physical changes manifest themselves more. You get more wrinkles, more dysfunction in your body. Obviously these things vary, right? They're based on genetics and environment, of course, but a combination of both. You can actually stave off a lot of the ill effects of old age by exercising and eating right. If you exercise and eat right, you can actually live to be a very old, healthy person. Um, so there's a lot of ways to to deal with that, to deal with the changes that happen. Um, Eventually, we all die, right? So that's like the last part of life is going on to the great beyond, right? So you've lived a good life. and now it's time to croak, right? So we go on to death and dying. One of the things about death is that it's very culture specific, right? And aging is too, actually. For example, if you go to Native American cultures, Native American cultures, they revere old people. Old people are revered in Native American cultures. So if you go to if you go to visit some of the, go to some of the tribal places in the United States, and just see the way the elders are treated, it's amazing. It's very different from the way old people are treated in our society, which is the exact opposite, right? Old people are looked down upon in our society for the most part, but in Native American cultures, it's quite the opposite. And this attitude has a lot to do again with our attitudes toward death, right? The different cultures have different attitudes toward death. Um, one of the things that um, one of the things that we do look at, one of the things that we've studied is, how do you treat somebody, who's dying, right? And one of the things that we have in this country now is what are called hospices. Or you guys have probably, I don't know if you've seen these, but a hospice is a place where people go to die, basically. So it's like, if once the hospital can't do any more for you to keep you alive, like terminal, we can't do anything for them. What a lot of times will happen is they'll put you in a hospice, and a hospice is a place where they'll care for you till you die. They'll give you a lot, medication to deal with your pain if you have it, um, and help you to go through it. One of the people that has done a lot of that published some interesting stuff about dying was a woman by the name of Kubler-Ross. She actually Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She actually worked with a lot of hospice folks and talked about how people go through different stages when they find out they're going to die. Right. She talked about the stages. The stages of grief that she talked about were first denial. It's like, oh no, 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 I'm not going to die. It's not going to happen to me. And then anger. They get angry about it, and then bargaining. They're like, oh God, please, please make the tumor, God, if you make this tumor non-cancerous, then I promise I'll go to church every Sunday for the rest of my life. Right? Depression. So you finally get depressed about it. And then finally acceptance, right? There's these 5 stages that she talked about, and she said that this is what people go through, and it turns out it's not quite true. It's a nice sort of like thing to hold in your head when you're dealing with the final act, dying. But for the most part, it's people vary a lot in how they react to death and how they react to the fact that they're about to die. So anyway, Chris came back, so I'm happy, so that's good. um I am done, gone through that chapter. So does anybody have any questions before we sign off? Comments or questions? Any good places to buy toilet paper or
So the syllabus was updated. It'll tell us which chapters we're going to be covering for the next exam.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Just check out the syllabus. Actually, let me pull it up real quick. Let me just show it to you real quick before we sign off. Let's see. I should have done that and I forgot. This is so overwhelming.
Updated one?
Yeah. Yeah, I already posted it on my little website. I've already got it posted.
Yeah, I saw that.
Let's see. Who are you guys? You guys are general psychology.
Yeah, I did it.
There we go. Let me share my screen real quick. My Blackboard. There's my Blackboard. Screen share screen. All right, so if you can see my screen here, here's the new calendar. So I gave us a coronavirus break. So there's our coronavirus break right there. And then, yeah, we just covered chapter 9. And then we're next week, we're going to do emotion and motivation, which is like a really fun chapter, by the way. And then right after that, I'll open up exam 3 on Blackboard. And it's going to cover, say again?
Go ahead.
Oh, exam 3 will cover chapter 7, 9, and 10.
Okay, not 8.
Not 8. Nope, not 8. And then for wrap up to semester, we're going to do personality, social psych. We're going to talk about crazy people and treating them.
Oh, that's my favorite.
That's right. Yeah. See, that's the stuff that everybody thought we were going to talk about the whole semester, but it's just the last two lectures, and then we'll wrap up on. I'll open up exam 4 on Blackboard on the 28th of April, and then it'll be due at midnight on the 12th of May, which I believe is the last day of finals. And this horrible, terrible national nightmare will be over.
Are we skipping chapter 8?
Because I lost a week in the when we had that coronavirus break, I lost a week. So I said, well,
chapter 8 anyway. I didn't even look at it.
Yeah, chapter 8 was oh gosh, what was it? It was I'm totally forgetting what it was about. Let me see.
Is it abnormal? No, that's what you're going over next.
Yeah. It's not memory. Is it memory? Oh yeah, it's memory. Yeah, learning in memory. Or memory. I'm sorry, memory. Memory, yeah, memory. Isn't that weird? I forgot memory, yeah. Those memory, which is actually a really boring topic. That's like one of my least favorite lectures to give. So I'm like, I'm totally okay dropping that. So yeah, that's our thing. And any questions about that? Does it make sense?
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, guys. Again, thanks for coming. You guys take care. If you need anything from me that I can help you with, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in a week.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Take care.